The dust kicked up behind the stagecoach as it rolled into El Paso, Texas, and Kieran Lawson barely noticed, his attention fixed on the woman crouched beside a sobbing child in the middle of the street. The sight stopped him cold, his hand frozen halfway to the whiskey glass on the saloon table where he had been sitting for the better part of an hour. She wore a simple blue dress that had seen better days, her dark auburn hair pinned up despite the Texas heat, bearing down on them all in the summer of 1873. What caught his breath was not her beauty, though she was lovely in an unassuming way, but the gentle patience in her every movement as she knelt in the dirt, heedless of her skirts, speaking softly to the crying boy. Kieran set down his glass and stood, drawn to the scene despite himself. He had been in El Paso for 3 weeks, working as a ranch hand for the Triple Creek outfit just outside of town, and in that time he had seen plenty of folks walk past troubles that were not their own. The West had a way of making people hard, of teaching them that survival meant looking after yourself first and foremost. But this woman, whoever she was, seemed untouched by that particular lesson. The child could not have been more than 5 years old, his face streaked with tears and dirt, his small body shaking with the force of his sobs. Kieran moved closer, close enough to hear the woman's voice, low and soothing like honey dripped over warm bread. "There now, sweetheart, it is all right. Can you tell me your name? I am Miss Amanda Nichols, and I promise I will help you find your mama." The boy hiccuped, his crying tapering off as he looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. "Tommy. My name is Tommy." "That is a fine name," Amanda said, her smile warm and genuine. "Now, Tommy, where did you last see your mama?" Tommy pointed a shaking finger toward the general store across the street. "We was shopping, and I saw a dog and I followed it, and then I could not find her no more." Amanda did not correct his grammar, did not scold him for wandering off. She simply nodded as if he had told her the most reasonable thing in the world. "Well then, Tommy, let us go to the general store and see if your mama is looking for you there. I bet she is worried sick." She stood and offered her hand, which the boy took without hesitation. Kieran found himself following them, drawn by something he could not name. He watched as Amanda led Tommy across the street, her stride purposeful but unhurried, her hands secure around the small boy's. They had barely reached the wooden steps of the general store when a woman came rushing out, her face pale with panic. "Tommy! Oh, thank the Lord!" The woman swept the boy up into her arms, crushing him against her chest. "I have been looking everywhere for you." "I am sorry, Mama," Tommy said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. The woman looked up at Amanda, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, miss. Thank you so much. I do not know what I would have done if he is safe now," Amanda interrupted gently. "That is all that matters." The woman tried to press a coin into Amanda's hand, but Amanda shook her head firmly. "Please, no. I am just glad I could help." She gave Tommy one last smile, then turned to leave. That was when her eyes met Kieran's. He had been staring, he realized, standing there in the middle of the street like a fool. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her eyes were the color of rich earth after rain, warm and deep, and Kieran felt something shift in his chest, something he had thought long dead after years of hard living and harder losses. Amanda looked away first, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she gathered her skirts and walked past him. Kieran watched her go, his mind suddenly filled with images he had not allowed himself to imagine in years. He saw that same gentle kindness turned toward him at the end of a long day. He saw it in a home filled with warmth and laughter. He saw it in the eyes of children who looked like both of them, who grew up knowing they were loved without question. The vision was so vivid, so unexpected, that it left him shaken. Kieran Lawson was 32 years old, and he had convinced himself that he was meant to live alone, to drift from ranch to ranch, town to town, with nothing but his horse and his saddle and the clothes on his back. His own childhood had been marked by a father's fists and a mother's early death, and he had sworn he would never bring a family into a world that could be so cruel. But watching Amanda Nichols comfort that frightened child, seeing the way she had given freely of herself without expecting anything in return, made him wonder if perhaps he had been wrong, if perhaps there was more to life than simply surviving it. He spent the rest of that day thinking about her. That night, lying in his bunk at the ranch, he imagined what it might be like to come home to someone like her. To have her smile at him the way she had smiled at Tommy. To feel her hands, so gentle with the boy, touch his face with that same tenderness. The thoughts kept him awake until well past midnight, and when he finally slept, he dreamed of a life he had never dared to want. The next morning, Kieran rode into El Paso with a determination he had not felt in years. He told himself he just wanted to see her again, to make sure that what he had felt the day before was real and not some trick of the desert heat. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Deep down, he knew that something fundamental had changed in him the moment he saw her kindness to that child. He found her at the small schoolhouse on the edge of town. It was a modest building, just one room with whitewashed walls and a bell tower that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. Through the open window, he could hear her voice, patient and clear, as she taught a room full of children their letters. Kieran had never been much for schooling. His father had pulled him out when he was 8 to work the failing farm they had owned back in Missouri, and by the time his father died when Kieran was 15, it had been too late to go back. But standing there listening to Amanda teach, he found himself wishing he had stayed. Wishing he had the kind of education that might make him worthy of a woman like her. He waited until the children were dismissed, watching as they poured out of the schoolhouse like water from a broken dam, their voices high and excited. Amanda stood in the doorway, waving to each of them, calling out reminders about their lessons for tomorrow. She did not notice Kieran until the last child had disappeared down the dusty street. Mr. Lawson. She said his name with surprise, and Kieran realized she must have asked someone about him. The thought pleased him more than it should have. "Miss Nichols," he replied, removing his hat. "I hope I am not disturbing you, not at all." She stepped down from the doorway, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. "Did you need something?" Kieran had not planned what he would say. He had spent the entire ride into town trying to come up with something clever, something that would make her see him as more than just another drifting cowboy. But standing in front of her, all his carefully rehearsed words fled. "I saw what you did yesterday," he said finally. "With that boy, Tommy, it was kind of you." Amanda looked down, that same blush from yesterday coloring her cheeks. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Kieran said firmly, "they would not have. I have been in this town 3 weeks, and I have seen plenty of folks walk right past troubles that were not their own. What you did, that was special." She looked up at him then, and Kieran saw surprise in her eyes, as if no one had ever told her that before. It was just the right thing to do. "Maybe," Kieran said. "But not everyone does the right thing, especially not when it costs them something. You got your dress all dirty kneeling in that street. You spent your time when I am sure you had other things to do. You gave of yourself and you did not ask for anything back. That is rare, Miss Nichols. That is worth acknowledging." For a long moment she just looked at him, and Kieran found himself holding his breath, waiting for her to speak. When she did, her voice was soft, almost uncertain. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. That is very kind of you to say. Would you let me walk you home?" The words were out before he could stop them, but once spoken, he did not regret them. It is getting late, and I would feel better knowing you got there safe. Amanda hesitated, and Kieran prepared himself for rejection. A woman like her probably had no shortage of suitors, men far more educated and refined than a ranch hand who could barely read. But then she smiled, a small, tentative thing that made his heart kick hard against his ribs. "I would like that," she said. They walked through El Paso as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Amanda lived in a small house near the church, she told him, one that had belonged to her aunt who had passed away the year before. She had come to El Paso from San Antonio, where she had been teaching at a girls' school, because the town needed a teacher and because she had wanted a fresh start. A fresh start from what? Kieran asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I am sorry, that was too personal." But Amanda did not seem offended. "No, it is all right. I was engaged back in San Antonio, to a man my father approved of, a banker's son. But 6 months before the wedding, I discovered that he had been courting another woman at the same time, someone with more money, better connections. When I confronted him, he did not even deny it. He said I should be grateful he had been willing to marry me at all, plain as I was." The matter-of-fact way she said it, as if she had accepted this judgment of herself, made Kieran's blood boil. That man was a fool. Amanda looked at him with surprise. "You do not even know me." "I know what I saw yesterday," Kieran said. "I know that you got down in the dirt to help a scared little boy. I know that you did not ask for anything in return, and you did not make it about you. I know that you teach children in a schoolhouse that looks like it might fall down any day, and you do it because you believe it matters. That tells me everything I need to know. You are not plain, Miss Nichols. You are beautiful, inside and out, and that man was a fool to let you go." She stopped walking, and for a terrifying moment, Kieran thought he had overstepped. But when she looked at him, her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "No one has ever said anything like that to me before." "Then you have been around the wrong people," Kieran said simply. They stood there in the fading light, the sounds of El Paso settling in for the evening around them. Somewhere a dog barked, and a child called out for their mother. The smell of cooking fires drifted on the warm breeze, and Kieran thought that he had never been more aware of a moment in his entire life. "This is my house," Amanda said, gesturing to a small adobe structure with a wooden door and a single window. It was modest but neat, with a small garden out front that was struggling against the Texas heat. "Thank you for walking with me, Mr. Lawson." "Kieran," he said. "Please call me Kieran." "Kieran." She said his name like she was tasting it, trying it out. "Then you must call me Amanda." "Amanda." He liked the way it felt in his mouth, liked the way her smile widened when he said it. "May I call on you again, properly, I mean, if you would be willing?" She did not answer right away, and Kieran's heart sank, but then she nodded once decisively. "I would like that very much. Perhaps you could come for dinner tomorrow evening. Nothing fancy, but I can promise it will be hot and filling." Kieran felt like he might float away. "I would be honored." That night, lying in his bunk, Kieran could not stop smiling. The other ranch hands noticed, of course, and ribbed him mercilessly about it, but he did not care. For the first time in his life, he let himself imagine a future that was not just about survival. He imagined Amanda's kindness filling his days, her smile the first thing he saw in the morning and the last thing at night. He imagined children who grew up knowing they were loved, who never had to feel the back of a hand or the sting of harsh words. He imagined building something that would last, something that mattered. The next day dragged by with agonizing slowness. Kieran threw himself into his work, helping to mend fences and move cattle, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about Amanda, about the way she had looked at him when he called her beautiful, about the soft warmth in her voice when she said his name. He thought about the life he wanted to build with her, the home they could make together. When evening finally came, Kieran took extra care with his appearance. He washed thoroughly, shaved, and put on his best shirt, the one without any holes or frayed edges. He even borrowed some hair tonic from one of the other hands, though he drew the line at the cologne that was offered. He wanted to smell clean, not like he had fallen into a flower garden. The ride into El Paso seemed to take forever, even though his horse was moving at a steady clip. By the time he reached Amanda's house, the sun was just beginning to set, painting everything in warm, golden light. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she would be able to hear it. Amanda answered almost immediately, and Kieran felt his breath catch. She had changed from her teaching dress into something softer, a pale green cotton that brought out the warmth in her eyes. Her hair was still pinned up, but a few strands had escaped to frame her face, and Kieran had to resist the urge to reach out and tuck them behind her ear. "You came," she said, and there was relief in her voice that made Kieran realize she had been worried he might not. "Of course," he said. "I gave you my word." She smiled and stepped back to let him in. The inside of her house was as neat and modest as the outside, but she had made it warm with small touches. There were curtains on the window, embroidered with simple flowers, a quilt draped over the single chair by the fireplace. Books stacked carefully on a shelf, their spines worn from use. On the small table in the center of the room, she had laid out 2 plates, 2 cups, and a steaming pot of what smelled like stew. "It is not much," Amanda said, suddenly sounding nervous. "Just beef stew and biscuits. But I hope you will like it." "It smells wonderful," Kieran said honestly. He could not remember the last time someone had cooked a meal just for him, could not remember the last time he had sat down to eat in a real home instead of a bunkhouse or a saloon. They sat together, and Amanda served the stew. It was good, hearty and flavorful, the kind of meal that stuck to your ribs and warmed you from the inside out. But even better than the food was the conversation. They talked about everything and nothing, about their childhoods and their dreams, about the books Amanda loved and the places Kieran had traveled. She told him about her students, about the little triumphs and frustrations of teaching. He told her about ranch life, about the satisfaction of hard work and the beauty of the land when the sun rose over the desert. What struck Kieran most was how easy it was to talk to her. He had never been a man of many words, had learned early that it was safer to keep his thoughts to himself. But with Amanda, the words came freely. She listened like what he said mattered, like his thoughts and feelings were important, and when she spoke, he found himself hanging on every word, wanting to know everything about her. "Why did you become a teacher?" he asked as they finished their meal. Amanda was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "My mother died when I was very young," she said finally. "And my father, he did his best, but he was always working. I was alone a lot. But I had a teacher, Miss Sarah, who saw that I was lonely. She used to let me stay after school and she would read to me, teach me things beyond what the other students were learning. She made me feel like I mattered, like my life had purpose. When she died when I was 15, I knew that I wanted to do that for other children. I wanted to make them feel seen, feel valued the way she made me feel." The passion in her voice, the depth of her caring, made Kieran's chest ache. "You do that," he said. "I saw it with Tommy, the way you treated him. Like he was the most important person in the world in that moment." "Every child deserves to feel that way," Amanda said. "Every person does, really. But children especially. They are so small, so vulnerable, and the world can be so hard on them. If I can give them even a few moments where they feel safe and cared for, then I have done something worthwhile." Kieran reached across the table and took her hand. It was a bold move, perhaps too bold, but he could not help himself. Her skin was soft and warm against his work-roughened palm. "You are remarkable, Amanda Nichols, truly remarkable." She did not pull away. Instead, she turned her hand in his, lacing their fingers together. "I think you are remarkable too, Kieran Lawson. Not many men would notice something like what I did with Tommy, and even fewer would care enough to say anything about it." "I noticed," Kieran said, his voice rough. "And I have not been able to stop thinking about it since. About you." Her eyes widened, and he saw hope flicker there, bright and tentative. "Truly, truly." He stood, still holding her hand, and drew her up to face him. They were close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could smell the faint scent of lavender that clung to her skin. "Amanda, I know we have only just met. I know I am just a ranch hand with no education and no prospects beyond my next paycheck. But watching you with that boy, seeing your kindness, it made me want things I have never let myself want before. It made me imagine a life that was more than just drifting from one place to another. It made me imagine a home, a family, something real and lasting. With you." For a long, breathless moment she said nothing. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Kieran had ever seen. "I have been imagining the same thing," she whispered. "Since you walked me home yesterday, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. About what it might be like to share my life with someone who truly sees me." Kieran raised his free hand to her face, cupping her cheek gently. "I see you," he said, "and what I see is the most extraordinary woman I have ever met." He kissed her then, soft and careful, pouring everything he felt into that single touch. She melted against him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and Kieran knew with absolute certainty that this was what he had been searching for all his life. This connection, this feeling of coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Amanda rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Now," Kieran said, "I court you properly. I come calling regular, take you on walks, let everyone in town see that I am serious about you. And when enough time has passed that it is respectable, I ask you to marry me." "And what if I do not want to wait for it to be respectable?" Amanda asked, a hint of mischief in her voice that made Kieran's heart soar. "Then I will marry you tomorrow if you will have me," he said. "But you deserve to be courted, Amanda. You deserve to have people see that you are valued, that you are cherished. I will not let anyone, not even you, rob you of that." She pulled back enough to look him in the eye, and Kieran saw tears there, but they were good tears, happy tears. "How did I get so lucky?" she whispered. "I am the lucky one," Kieran said, "and I intend to spend every day for the rest of my life proving that to you." Over the next few weeks, Kieran made good on his promise. He came into town every evening after work, sometimes bringing Amanda wildflowers he had picked on the ride, sometimes bringing her books he had borrowed from the few ranch hands who could read. They took walks through El Paso, and Kieran made sure everyone saw them together, saw how he looked at her like she hung the moon. They talked about everything. Amanda told him about her dreams of expanding the school, of maybe one day having a building that did not leak when it rained. Kieran told her about his childhood, about the darkness he had survived, and Amanda listened without judgment, her hand firm in his, her presence a balm on old wounds. He met her students and they adored him. The boys wanted to hear stories about ranch life and riding horses, and the girls giggled and whispered about how handsome Miss Nichols' beau was. Kieran found himself helping with the school, fixing the loose boards on the steps, patching the leaks in the roof. It felt good, having something to care for beyond just himself. Amanda came out to the Triple Creek Ranch one Sunday, and Kieran introduced her to the other hands. They were rough men, most of them hardened by years of difficult work and harder living. But they treated Amanda with respect, tipping their hats and watching their language, because they saw how much she meant to Kieran, and because her kindness was impossible to resist. She brought them fresh baked bread and listened to their stories with genuine interest, and by the time she left, she had won over every single one of them. The foreman, a grizzled old man named Pete who rarely smiled, pulled Kieran aside and said, "You better marry that girl before someone else gets smart and snaps her up." "That is the plan," Kieran said, grinning, but before he could propose, trouble found them. It started with a man named Victor Marsh, who owned the biggest ranch in the area. He was wealthy, powerful, and used to getting what he wanted. And what he wanted, it turned out, was the land where Amanda's house stood. He wanted to expand El Paso, to build new businesses, and her little adobe home was right in the middle of where he wanted to construct a hotel. Marsh came to Amanda's door on a Tuesday evening, just as Kieran was arriving for dinner. He was a tall man with cold eyes and a smile that never reached past his teeth. "Miss Nichols," he said, tipping his expensive hat, "I have a business proposition for you." Amanda stepped out onto her small porch, Kieran close behind her. "Mr. Marsh, what can I do for you?" "I want to buy your property," Marsh said bluntly. "I am prepared to offer you a fair price, more than fair, really, enough for you to relocate anywhere you want." "This is my home," Amanda said, her voice steady. "It was my aunt's home before that. I have no intention of selling." Marsh's smile tightened. "I think you misunderstand, Miss Nichols. This is not really a negotiation. I am going to build my hotel here one way or another. It would be much easier for everyone if you simply took my offer and left quietly." Kieran stepped forward, putting himself between Marsh and Amanda. "The lady said no. I suggest you respect that." Marsh looked at Kieran like he was something stuck to the bottom of his boot. "And who are you? Her guard dog?" "I am the man who is going to marry her," Kieran said, his voice hard. "And I am telling you that she said no. Now leave." For a moment, Kieran thought Marsh might push back, might try to escalate things. But then the man seemed to reconsider, looking at Kieran's size and the set of his shoulders, and he stepped back. "This is not over," he said to Amanda. "I always get what I want, Miss Nichols, one way or another." He left, but his words hung in the air like a threat. "What are we going to do?" Amanda asked, her voice small. Kieran turned and pulled her into his arms. "We are going to fight. That house is yours, and no bully is going to take it from you. I will make sure of it." Over the next few days, Marsh tried everything. He sent lawyers to threaten Amanda with legal action. He spread rumors around town that she was a squatter, that she had no legal claim to the property. He even tried to bribe the sheriff to evict her, though thankfully the sheriff was an honest man who refused. Through it all, Kieran stood by Amanda's side. He helped her gather the documents proving her ownership, the deed that had been passed from her aunt. He spoke to everyone in town, making sure they knew the truth about Marsh's attempts to steal her land. And when Marsh sent some of his ranch hands to intimidate her, Kieran and the men from Triple Creek were there to send them packing. The whole ordeal brought Kieran and Amanda even closer together. In the face of Marsh's threats, they found strength in each other. Amanda marveled at Kieran's protectiveness, his fierce determination to keep her safe. Kieran was in awe of her courage, the way she refused to be bullied or intimidated. One night, after a particularly long day of dealing with Marsh's lawyers, they sat together on Amanda's porch, watching the stars come out over El Paso. Amanda was quiet, her head resting on Kieran's shoulder, and he could feel the tension in her body. "I am tired," she said finally. "Not just from this, from Marsh. I am tired of fighting. Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier to just give him what he wants and leave." Kieran turned to face her, his hands on her shoulders. "Look at me, Amanda." When she did, he saw tears in her eyes and it broke his heart. "You are the strongest person I know. You have faced down a bully who has more money and power than most people will ever see, and you have not given an inch. You are fighting for what is yours, for what is right, and I am so proud of you." "I just do not know how much more I can take," she whispered. "Then let me carry some of the weight," Kieran said. "That is what I am here for. You do not have to face this alone. You will never have to face anything alone again as long as I am alive." She kissed him then, desperate and fierce, and Kieran held her close, wishing he could absorb all her pain and fear. "Marry me," he said when they finally broke apart. "Right now, tonight. We will ride to the church and wake up the preacher and do it properly. I do not want to wait any more, Amanda. I want you to be my wife. I want everyone, including Victor Marsh, to know that you are under my protection, that you are mine and I am yours." "Yes," Amanda said without hesitation. "Yes, Kieran, I will marry you." They rode through El Paso in the dark, the streets empty except for the occasional drunk stumbling home from the saloon. The church was dark when they arrived, but Kieran pounded on the door until the preacher, an elderly man named Reverend Thomas, answered in his nightshirt, a candle in his hand. "Mr. Lawson, Miss Nichols, what on earth? We want to get married," Kieran said. "Tonight, right now." Reverend Thomas blinked sleepily at them. "Right now, but there are no witnesses, no one to stand up with you." "Then we will find some," Amanda said, her voice firm. She looked at Kieran and smiled, and he saw joy there, bright and undimmed despite everything they had been through. "We will wake up the whole town if we have to." In the end, they did not need to wake the whole town. They found Pete and another ranch hand named Jake having a late drink at the saloon, and both men agreed immediately to serve as witnesses. By the time they made it back to the church, Reverend Thomas had changed into his proper clothes and lit all the candles. The ceremony was simple, just the words and the vows, but it was perfect. Kieran held Amanda's hands in his and promised to love her, to cherish her, to stand by her through whatever came their way. Amanda promised the same, her voice steady and sure, her eyes never leaving his. And when Reverend Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, Kieran kissed Amanda like it was the first and last time all at once. They spent their wedding night in Amanda's house, the house that was now theirs together. Kieran carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, giddy with joy and relief and love. And as he held his wife in his arms, as she touched his face with that same gentle kindness he had fallen in love with, Kieran knew that every hard thing he had ever been through had been worth it to bring him to this moment. The news of their marriage spread through El Paso like wildfire. Some people were scandalized by how quickly it had happened, but most were happy for them. Kieran's fellow ranch hands clapped him on the back and teased him mercilessly about being a married man. Amanda's students were thrilled, already calling Kieran Mr. Lawson and asking when there would be little Lawsons running around. Victor Marsh, however, was furious. He came to their door 2 days after the wedding, his face red with anger. "You think this changes anything?" He shouted at Kieran. "You think marrying her is going to stop me?" "I think it makes it a lot harder for you to bully her," Kieran said calmly. "She has a husband now, Marsh, someone who will fight for her, and I am not the only one. Every ranch hand at Triple Creek has sworn to protect her. Half the town is on our side. You can keep pushing, but you are going to lose." "This land is worth thousands," Marsh hissed. "I am not giving up." "Then prepare for a long fight," Kieran said, "because we are not going anywhere." Marsh left, but Kieran knew he would be back. Men like that did not give up easily. But Kieran also knew that he and Amanda were stronger together than Marsh could ever be alone. As it turned out, Kieran was right. Over the next few weeks, Marsh's support began to crumble. The sheriff, tired of the man's constant attempts at bribery and intimidation, started investigating his business dealings and found evidence of fraud and extortion. Several of Marsh's ranch hands, disgusted by his tactics, quit and came to work for Triple Creek instead. And the people of El Paso, seeing how Amanda and Kieran refused to be bullied, rallied around them. In the end, it was Marsh who left. Facing criminal charges and social ostracism, he sold his ranch and left Texas, vowing never to return. Kieran and Amanda celebrated by inviting the entire town to a party at their home, a joyous gathering that lasted well into the night. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm after that. Kieran continued to work at Triple Creek, but he began saving money with a new purpose. He wanted to buy his own land, to start his own ranch where he and Amanda could build the life they had dreamed about. Amanda continued teaching, her school growing as more families moved to El Paso, and word of her skills spread. They talked every night about their dreams, about the future they were building together. Kieran told Amanda he wanted children, lots of them, filling their home with laughter and love. Amanda told him she wanted the same, wanted to give their children the kind of childhood neither of them had truly had, full of safety and warmth and knowing they were cherished. A year after their wedding, Amanda told Kieran she was pregnant. He had come home from work to find her standing in the doorway, her hands pressed to her stomach, her eyes bright with joy and fear. "I am with child," she said, and Kieran's world tilted on its axis. He crossed to her in 3 long strides and swept her up into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "We are going to have a baby," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Amanda, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" She asked, and there was a vulnerability in her voice that made him set her down gently and frame her face with his hands. "I am more than happy," he said. "I am terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can hardly breathe. You are giving me a family, Amanda, a real family. Something I never thought I would have." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "We are giving each other a family, and our child is going to be so loved, Kieran, so incredibly loved." The pregnancy was not easy. Amanda was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep anything down. Kieran fretted over her constantly, bringing her water and dry crackers, holding her hair back when she was ill, sitting with her in the quiet hours of the morning when she could not sleep. But as the months passed and Amanda's belly grew round with their child, Kieran found himself overwhelmed with wonder. He would sit with her in the evenings, his hand on her stomach, feeling their baby move and kick. He talked to the child, told them stories about the ranch and the horses, promised that he would always keep them safe, always love them. Amanda would watch him with tears in her eyes. "You are going to be such a good father," she would say, and Kieran would hold her close, hoping desperately that she was right. Their son was born on a cold January morning in 1875. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Kieran thought he might lose his mind with worry. But Amanda was strong, stronger than he had ever imagined, and when the midwife finally placed their baby in Kieran's arms, he felt something break open in his chest. The boy had Amanda's brown eyes and a shock of dark hair. He was small and perfect and screaming at the top of his lungs, and Kieran had never seen anything more beautiful in his life. "What should we name him?" Amanda asked, exhausted but radiant as Kieran placed their son in her arms. "I was thinking Thomas," Kieran said. "After the little boy you helped that day in the street, the day I fell in love with you." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Thomas," she whispered, looking down at their son. Tommy, I love it. It is perfect. Tommy Lawson grew up surrounded by love. Kieran and Amanda poured everything they had into raising him, determined that he would know he was wanted, that he was treasured. Amanda taught him to read and write almost as soon as he could talk, delighting in his quick mind and curious nature. Kieran taught him to ride and rope, to care for animals and respect the land. But more than any practical skill, they taught him kindness. They taught him to help those who needed it, to stand up for what was right, to treat everyone with dignity and respect. They taught him by example, by the way they treated each other and their neighbors, by the way they welcomed strangers into their home and shared what they had with those who had less. Kieran bought his own land when Tommy was 3, a modest spread about 5 miles outside of El Paso. It was not much at first, just 100 acres and a small house, but it was theirs. He built it up slowly, carefully, with Amanda by his side every step of the way. She helped him choose where to build the barn, where to plant the garden. She made their house a home with curtains and quilts and the smell of fresh bread. As the years passed, their family grew. A daughter came 2 years after Tommy, and they named her Sarah, after the teacher who had changed Amanda's life. Then another son and another daughter, until their home was filled with the sound of children's laughter and running feet. Kieran built additions onto the house to make room, and Amanda taught all of them in the mornings before sending them out to help with the ranch work. Kieran never forgot that moment when he had first seen Amanda's kindness to a child, never stopped imagining her kindness filling his entire life. And every day, he woke up grateful that his imagination had become reality. Amanda's kindness was in every corner of their home, in every interaction with their children, in the way she touched his face at night before they fell asleep. She was kind when he had bad dreams about his childhood, holding him and reminding him that he was safe now, that he was loved. She was kind when he struggled with reading, patiently helping him practice until the words came easier. She was kind to the ranch hands who worked for them, treating them like family, making sure they had good food and fair wages and a place to rest their heads. And Kieran tried every day to be worthy of that kindness. He was gentle with their children, even when they tested his patience. He supported Amanda's teaching, building a larger schoolhouse on their property so she could teach not just their own children but the children of the ranch hands and neighbors. He was faithful and true, never looking at another woman, never giving Amanda reason to doubt his love. They had hard times, of course. There were years when the rain did not come and the cattle struggled. There were illnesses that frightened them, injuries that reminded them how fragile life could be. There were moments of doubt and fear and exhaustion, but through it all, they had each other. And that, Kieran came to realize, was everything. When Tommy was 16, tall and strong and so much like his father it made Amanda's heart ache, he asked Kieran about the day his parents had met. They were mending fence together, just the two of them, and Tommy had been quiet for a while before speaking. "How did you know Mama was the one?" he asked. Kieran paused in his work, thinking about how to answer. "I saw her help a little boy who was lost," he said finally. "Your namesake, actually. And the way she was with him, so gentle and patient and kind, it made me imagine what my life could be like if I had someone like that to share it with. It made me want to be better, to be the kind of man who could deserve a woman like her." "And did you become that man?" Tommy asked. Kieran smiled. "I have spent every day since trying. I do not know if I have succeeded, but your mother makes me want to keep trying. That is what love is, I think. Not just feeling something, but choosing every day to be the best version of yourself for the person you love." Tommy was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I want that someday, what you and Mama have." "You will find it," Kieran said, clasping his son's shoulder. And when you do, you hold on to it with everything you have, because there is nothing more valuable in this world than love, son. Nothing. Years turned into decades. Kieran's hair went gray, then white. Amanda's face gained lines, but to Kieran, she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her in the street with little Tommy. Their children grew up and had children of their own, and the house that Kieran had built was filled with grandchildren who called him Grandpa and climbed on his lap for stories. Amanda retired from teaching when she was 60, finally slowing down after years of pouring herself into her students. But she still helped with the grandchildren, still taught them their letters and numbers, still showed them the same patience and kindness that had captivated Kieran all those years ago. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Kieran took Amanda back to El Paso, to the spot where he had first seen her help that lost child. The town had grown and changed, was barely recognizable from the dusty frontier settlement it had been. But the memory was still vivid in Kieran's mind. "Do you remember?" he asked, holding her hand. "Of course," Amanda said, smiling up at him. "How could I forget? That was the day everything changed." "I fell in love with you right here," Kieran said, "watching you with that little boy, and I have not stopped falling in love with you since." "Every day, Amanda. Every single day." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his weathered skin. "And I love you, Kieran Lawson, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. You made all my dreams come true. You gave me a family, a home, a life filled with joy. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They stood there together, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful and lasting out of a single moment of kindness. And as the sun set over El Paso, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold just like it had that first evening, Kieran thought about how lucky he was. He had imagined Amanda's kindness filling his entire life, and she had exceeded even his wildest dreams. She had not just filled his life with kindness, but with love and laughter and joy. She had given him children and grandchildren, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. She had made him believe that he was worthy of love, that he could be more than his painful past. And every day, for 40 years, she had shown him through her actions what it meant to truly love someone, not just in the big moments, but in the small ones, in the way she made his coffee in the morning, in the way she touched his shoulder as she walked past, in the way she listened when he talked, really listened, like what he said mattered. That kindness, that love had transformed him. It had made him a better man, a better father, a better husband. It had given him a reason to get up every morning and a reason to give thanks every night. It had filled his entire life, just as he had imagined it would, and it had made that life worth living. They went home that evening to a house full of family, to children and grandchildren who had gathered to celebrate their anniversary. There was food and laughter and music, and Kieran danced with Amanda in the middle of their living room while everyone watched and clapped. "Thank you," he whispered in her ear as they swayed together, "for saying yes all those years ago. For taking a chance on a broken cowboy who had nothing to offer you but his heart." "Your heart was more than enough," Amanda whispered back. "It was everything. You were everything." As the years continued to pass, Kieran and Amanda grew old together. Their bodies slowed down, their steps became more careful, but their love never dimmed. They still sat together on the porch every evening, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still kissed each other goodnight, still said, "I love you," every single day. When Kieran was 75, he fell ill with a fever that would not break. The doctor came and did what he could, but everyone knew that Kieran's time was drawing near. Amanda never left his side, holding his hand and talking to him even when he was too weak to respond. Their children gathered around, bringing the grandchildren to say goodbye. Tommy, now a man with gray in his own hair, sat by his father's bedside and thanked him for everything he had taught him. Sarah and the others did the same, tears streaming down their faces. But when they were alone, just Kieran and Amanda in the quiet of their bedroom, Kieran squeezed her hand and smiled. "I am not afraid," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I have had the most extraordinary life, Amanda, all because of you." "Because of us," Amanda corrected, tears streaming down her face. "We did it together, Kieran. Everything we built together." "I love you," Kieran said. "I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. You made me believe in forever, Amanda. You made me believe in love." "And you made me believe I was worthy of being loved," Amanda said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. "You saw me when no one else did. You chose me when everyone else had overlooked me. You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I did not even know I could want." Kieran Lawson died peacefully that night, with Amanda's hand in his and a smile on his face. He had lived a long, full life, rich with love and joy and purpose. And it had all started with one moment, one act of kindness to a child in the middle of a dusty Texas street. Amanda lived for 5 more years after Kieran's death. They were hard years, lonely without her husband by her side. But she was surrounded by the family they had created together, by children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren who all carried pieces of Kieran in them. His kindness, his strength, his steadfast love. She told them stories about their grandfather, about how they had met and fallen in love. She told them about the life they had built together, about the challenges they had overcome and the joy they had shared. And she made sure they understood that love was not just a feeling but a choice. A choice you made every single day to show up for the person you cared about, to treat them with kindness and respect, to build something beautiful together. When Amanda finally passed away peacefully in her sleep, one spring morning, surrounded by flowers from her garden and the sound of children playing outside, everyone said she went with a smile on her face. And in the town of El Paso, Texas, people still told the story of Kieran and Amanda Lawson, the cowboy and the teacher who had found each other in a moment of kindness and had built a love that lasted a lifetime. Their ranch passed to their children, who kept it running and added to it over the years. The schoolhouse Amanda had built still stood, and her great-great-grandchildren would eventually teach there, carrying on her legacy of kindness and education. And in the family Bible, preserved carefully through the generations, was an entry in Kieran's careful handwriting, written just weeks after their wedding. "I saw her kindness to a child, and I imagined her kindness filling my entire life. God was gracious enough to make that imagination reality, and I will spend every day I have left being grateful." Their love story became legend in El Paso, told and retold until it became part of the town's history. And every time it was told, people marveled at how one moment, one simple act of kindness, had changed 2 lives so completely. How a cowboy had seen a woman help a lost child and had found his entire future in that single glimpse of her heart. But more than that, people marveled at what Kieran and Amanda had built from that moment. Not just a marriage, but a partnership. Not just a family, but a legacy. They had shown everyone around them what real love looked like. The kind that endured through hardship and celebrated through joy. The kind that made you better and stronger and more complete. The house where they had raised their children still stood well into the next century, preserved by the family as a reminder of where they had come from. And carved into the wooden beam above the front door, in letters that Kieran had painstakingly etched himself, were the words, "Love lives here." Because it had. Love had lived in every corner of that house, in every board and nail that Kieran had put together with his own hands. Love had lived in the meals Amanda cooked and the lessons she taught. It had lived in the laughter of their children and the tears they shed together. It had lived in the quiet moments and the loud ones, in the ordinary days and the extraordinary ones. And that love, born from a cowboy's observation of a woman's kindness to a child, had rippled out to touch countless lives. Their children carried it forward to their own families. Their students carried it into their communities. Everyone who had known Kieran and Amanda Lawson had been touched by their love, had seen what was possible when two people truly committed to building a life together. In the end, Kieran's imagination that day in El Paso had been more than fulfilled. Amanda's kindness had not just filled his life, it had overflowed from it, touching everyone they encountered. And though they were gone, that kindness, that love, continued to ripple forward through time, a legacy that would never truly end, because love like theirs was eternal. Not in spite of the challenges they had faced, but because of how they had faced them together. Not because their life had been perfect, but because they had chosen each other every single day, no matter what came their way. Kieran had seen Amanda's kindness to a child and had imagined her kindness filling his entire life. And Amanda had seen Kieran's protection and devotion and had given him all the love she had to give. Together, they had created something beautiful, something lasting, something that proved that even in the hard, unforgiving landscape of the Old West, love could flourish and grow and change the world. Their story was one of hope and redemption, of two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. It was a testament to the power of kindness, to the importance of really seeing another person and valuing them for who they are. It was a reminder that love is not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances, but about showing up every day and choosing to be present, to be faithful, to be kind. And in El Paso, Texas, where it all began, their legacy lived on. In the kindness of strangers helping lost children. In marriages built on partnership and respect. In families who loved fiercely and protected each other. In every small act of goodness that rippled out to change a life. Because that was what Kieran and Amanda Lawson had taught everyone who knew them, that kindness matters, that love transforms, and that every single moment holds the potential to change everything. All you have to do is be willing to see it, to act on it, to let it change you. Kieran had seen Amanda's kindness to a child, and it had changed his entire life. And through the life they built together, through the love they shared and the family they created, that one moment of kindness had gone on to change countless other lives as well, echoing forward through time, a testament to the enduring power of love.